Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. A heads up, over the next 2 or so weeks, we're having some construction done in our home, and my office is the central hub, so Ashley and I will be at a new location for a bit. And as a result, I will not be on camera for these episodes. I know it's not as engaging, but I appreciate your understanding on this one, and I'll be back on camera and in my regular routine as soon as we're able. I'm sure many of you have seen this by now, but just in case you haven't, listen to what Jim Farley just said.
I think we're in good shape with our internal capabilities. But look, we're not so Pollyannish about our own capability that we're not going to look at other people's system or not believe that level 4 personal autonomy is going to be interesting at some point. They're making a lot of progress over there in level 4. And it is time for us, not just in the US, but globally, to start looking at, and that's why we made some of the announcements we did today, because we need a strong strategy team to decide, do we partner? Do we continue to ride our own team into this level 4 personal autonomy? And I think you're going to find, just like our move on Argo, we'll be thoughtful and practical. We won't get in love with the size of the market. We'll make a practical decision, and I think we'll be well positioned. I'm very confident in Sammy and Doug and their technical prowess. They know the FSD system. They know what's out there. They know the Waymo system as it gets democratized for level 4, individual level 4. And so I think we'll make a good decision. But I think, Adam, we're a lot closer to that partnering decision at Ford.
A few things. Number one, the term Pollyannish just basically means overly optimistic. Second, it's important to know who Sammy and Doug are. Sammy is Sammy Omari, Ford's executive director of ADAS. So he leads Ford's Blue Crews, and then it's Doug Field, who, yes, used to be an executive at Tesla. And naturally, plenty of people are excited thinking that this was Jim Farley saying that Ford is close to partnering with Tesla to license FSD, and that certainly might be the case. I just want to highlight one thing. Waymo is actually already in the midst of licensing its technology to Hyundai, as they announced late last year. It's going to be critical for Ford to find every single edge possible to catch up when it comes to the EV race, because it knows that it's well behind. So from Ford's perspective, they can choose to license FSD, who is a direct competitor because Tesla makes EVs, or they can choose to give that partnering money and licensing fees to Waymo, who's not a direct competitor. Obviously, Waymo doesn't have any EVs that compete with the F-150 Lightning or the Mach-E. And later this year, we're supposed to see these Waymo systems integrated into Hyundai Ioniq 5 vehicles. That's when the testing will begin, and then these Ioniq 5s are set to be added to the Waymo network in the years to follow for passenger rides. And listen, most of us here would probably agree and believe that Tesla will have unsupervised FSD paid rides here sometime this year, but from Ford's perspective, they may not have that confidence. They may be looking at Waymo right now expanding fairly quickly to different cities with paid driverless rides and thinking maybe we can just get started with Waymo's system now and not give that money to Tesla. I am not trying to argue that I think Ford's going to choose Waymo. I'm really just playing devil's advocate here and trying to say that I don't think it's a done deal that Ford is definitely going to choose FSD. But either way, it does sound like we're going to find out sometime later this year. Farley also said for larger retail electric vehicles, the economics are unresolvable. These customers have very demanding use cases for an EV. They tow, they go off-road, they take long trips. These vehicles have worse aerodynamics and they're very heavy, which means large and expensive batteries. Farley was talking about bigger SUVs like the Ford Expedition for retail customers. He said retail customers have shown they will not pay any premium for these large EVs, making them a very tough business case. Thus, on the retail side, it sounds like bigger electric vehicles are not in the plans at all for Ford. Those vehicles will likely be the extended range EVs if they have an electrified offering in that segment at all. Farley said small and medium-sized trucks and SUVs are the sweet spot for pure EVs. Had to pass this video along, as Brian from Futuraza said, who said Waymo rides can't be exciting. Of course, you'll see headlines like this today. The Trump administration halts $5 billion EV charging program that benefited Tesla, painting it as some terrible thing for Tesla's business. This is dealing with the NEVI program, the National EV Infrastructure Program, and the agency said it's immediately suspending the approval of plans to deploy new EV chargers for all fiscal years and will no longer approve new funding requests until a new plan is implemented, which is supposed to be ready by the spring. This really is no surprise at all. This is the very program that after about 2 years of being launched had a handful of sites actually deployed. However, the word is the legality of pausing this program is still an open question, considering the money for it was approved by Congress as part of the IRA. I've seen some folks say that Tesla got none of this money. That's not accurate. Tesla has received $31 million from NEVI funding for 539 fast charging ports, which works out to 6% of all of the funds from this program distributed so far. But of course, $31 million really is a drop in the bucket for Tesla at this stage. Have a listen to what Elon said about it back in 2021.
What about the support, though, for the charging network? I mean, there are parts of this bill. No?
No. I mean, do we need support for gas stations? We don't. So there's no need for this for support for a charging network. I would delete it. Delete.
Okay. All right.
I'm literally saying get rid of all subsidies. But also for oil and gas.
So Elon's stance on this has not wavered over the past few years, and the reality is that 94% of these NEVI funds were basically going to Tesla's competitors. And sure, some of those competitors would have sites that had NACS ports that Tesla customers could use, but remember, this was the funding that required CCS ports at these locations to get the funding. This will slow down the public charging rollout, especially in those underserved areas that this NEVI funding was meant to target. But Tesla doesn't need the money, and the requirements around CCS were outdated anyway. And again, the word is states are under no obligation to stop these projects based solely on this announcement. They're saying there's no legal basis for stopping plans that have already been approved and funded. Plus, there will still be private companies like Iona that continue to push forward with their EV charging plans. Speaking of Iona, they now have 6 locations open, and they plan to open more than 100 sites with more than 1,000 charging bays this year. In case you want to check one of these locations out, they're Apex, North Carolina, Willoughby, Ohio, Springfield, Ohio, Scranton, PA, Houston, Texas, and Abilene, Kansas. In a somewhat confounding move by Tesla, they have increased the price of the Model X by $5,000 for each variant, which means the all-wheel drive version no longer qualifies for the tax credit. Which means for those that did qualify, this vehicle just became $12,500 more expensive overnight. And back to the conversation about what Tesla's plans are for the Model S and X, I know I never followed up on that. I would love to see these vehicles stick around as flagship products for Tesla, even though they're low volume. And I think it'd be tough to make the argument that would be a good business decision for Tesla given how low the volumes are for these vehicles, but from a consumer perspective, I've always aspirationally wanted to eventually move up to a Model S. And I thought it would be cool for these vehicles to serve as a test bed for new technology for Tesla, but the way things are trending, it doesn't look like that's where we're going. So unless there was something wild that happened throughout the supply chain that made cost of goods sold go way up for this model, maybe this is their way of beginning to phase this vehicle out. Again though, that's pure speculation on my part. It could just be a simple price hike because customers in this price range are not that price sensitive to begin with. Maybe it has something to do with retaliatory tariffs because these vehicles do have parts that come from all over the world. But only time will tell. At the same time, Tesla is now saying that the Model S and X come with free supercharging for orders in the US, Canada, Puerto Rico, Europe, and the Middle East. For some, I think this might be a good trade-off, but I think for most, when you factor in the time value of money, this is definitely not a $5,000 offer. We got the weekly Tesla China data. The reading was 13,400, but it was for 2 weeks combined, given the holiday. That's just how they reported it this time around. So I just split it up 50-50 to keep it consistent. So through the first 5 weeks, quarter over quarter, Tesla China is down 26.2%, and year over year, They're down 19.7%. However, as I've said in the past, all of Tesla's sales data for Q1 and probably into Q2 is going to be skewed to the downside given the changeover to the new Model Y. It's a similar story when it comes to the wholesale number for January. It was 63,238, which was down 13% compared to January of last year. This one is definitely just a rumor. However, this account has gotten some things right over the past few weeks, which is why I'm sharing. They said based on counting VIN numbers, Tesla China has received 170,000 orders so far, and there's still 2 months left in Q1. For a bit of context, 170,000 orders is basically 1 quarter worth for domestic deliveries in China that Tesla is rumored to have received in basically 1 month. I did want to touch on the debt sale of X that we covered recently. That EBITDA figure of $1.25 billion that was seemingly a nice improvement did actually include the $1 billion payment from XAI to X. And one could certainly make the argument this was a non-arm's length transaction. So without that payment from XAI, the EBITDA figure drops to about $250 million, which would actually be lower than where it was back in 2021. And to be clear, I'm not trying to argue that $1 billion transaction is actually worth zero because X is getting access to the data from XAI. I just wanted to make it clear this $1.25 billion number did include that payment from XAI. The town of Collie in Western Australia is set to host a Tesla battery remanufacturing facility as part of a new deal between Tesla and the state Labor government. This facility will be used to service, repair, and renew Tesla's battery products, which will be co-located with Neoen's Collie battery project. You know, the one where stage 1 is 877 megawatt hours and stage 2 is over 1.3 gigawatt hours, both stages being built with Tesla Megapacks. The site will service Tesla's Megapacks and other Tesla products installed in Western Australia, and it could also service residential Powerwall batteries as well. And they throw in the potential for EV charging equipment servicing as well. A partnership like this means faster servicing of equipment, less downtime, and then less logistical costs for Tesla. Just like it's important to localize production and localize the supply chain, it's also important to localize the service for this global Megapack business as well. In the most shocking news all year, Nikola Motors is nearing a bankruptcy filing. After Q3, they had produced more than 80 trucks at a net loss of about $200 million. Quite frankly, this company has been an absolute clown show from very, very early on, and I'm really surprised that it took this long to get here. Colton from Out of Spec highlighted that Tesla is continually making changes to the Cybertruck, this time on the fly. Nothing major, but the plastic housing or the coating on the Cybertruck mirrors is now a bit more textured and granular. Colton said the smooth grain plastic would stain easily, and this new version should hold up better. For my Canadian friends, Tesla is now offering 0.99% APR for orders placed by March 7th for the Model 3. In the event your FSD is stuck on version 13.2.2, just know you're not alone and there is a reason. Kalina from Tesla AI said, "Please be patient, found an issue specific to that update path, but a fix is coming soon. There are many folks on older builds also waiting, and we're working hard to get everyone covered." I'm going to apologize in advance for clicking on this Electric article, and I am somewhat ashamed of myself for doing so, but I just had to pass along how unhinged Fred has become. We have Kimball, Vibov, and Robin Denholm exercising some options and selling some Tesla stock, really nothing crazy. Yet Fred goes on to say it's wild to see these board members getting absurdly rich while the company has erased its growth and is heading into one of its worst quarters in years. All while they sit on their hands and do nothing, while they're the only ones who could do something about the CEO who seemingly engages in fireable offenses every day. Tesla has one of the worst corporate governance of any major companies I've ever witnessed. I mean, my goodness, I can literally taste this man's salt from here. If you just got a bit of adrenaline, maybe put that to good use and go do some push-ups. Originally, Iowa Tesla on X was saying how brutal FSD 12.6 was for him, but then he said to calibrate your cameras and that it made a huge difference from him, so just a friendly PSA. Some people were mistakenly, in my opinion, sharing this clip of Chris Wright, the new energy secretary. They were saying this guy is super bullish on energy storage, but I'm not so sure. Anyway, have a listen.
And the solution to climate change is to evolve our energy system. I've worked on that most all of my career. Again, in nuclear and solar and geothermal and new battery storage technology now. Do I wish we could make faster progress? Absolutely. Are there things we can do, investments, together through the Department of Energy to accelerate development of new energy technologies that are really the only pathway to address climate change? Absolutely.
Notice how he said new battery storage technology now. We just got a new article talking about Chris Wright and his plan to unleash the golden era of American energy dominance. However, nowhere in this article, which is somewhat lengthy, did it say anything about lithium-ion battery storage. Affordability for home appliances, refilling the petroleum reserve, modernizing the nuclear stockpile, more nuclear, and then strengthening grid reliability, which maybe you'd expect to hear about battery storage here, but nothing of the sort. When it comes to this new tech, Chris said, I'm quite passionate about alternative energies and have been my whole life, specifically sodium-ion battery technology. He's also publicly supported more fossil fuel production as a means to address poverty. So my point here is that when you consider all of the context, I would not get that excited about Chris Wright being gung-ho about battery storage, specifically lithium-ion. He's really looking to take a multi-pronged approach to unleash this new energy era, and lithium-ion battery storage is definitely not a centerpiece of that plan. Now, is that really going to matter for Tesla's business the next few years? I would make the argument no. I think the demand is going to be there. There's enough momentum already. There's enough projects that are proven, but we'll certainly keep an eye on it. Tesla stock closed the day at $361.62, down 3.39%, while the Nasdaq was down 1.36%. It was an average volume day for Tesla. Hope you guys have a wonderful and a safe weekend. Please like the video. If you did, you can find me on X, linked below. And a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.